the region to search Mediterranean Sea territory for the possibility of oil and gas drillings. Turkey's such action caused a tension between the NATO allies, because the Sea Territory Area's jurisdiction, where Turkey is about to search for oil and gas, is claimed by both Turkey and Greece. So, in the Mediterranean Sea, two rival ships, one from Turkey and the other from Greece, collided with each other on the 12th of August. It made things worse between the two countries. A Greek defence source called it an accident, and Ankara called it a provocation. After the collision, some photos and videos have been released on social media showing the damage to these ships, but both parties are still accusing each other of wrongdoing and using fake footage of the incident. The collision of the two rival ships is not the reason why the countries are hostile towards each other. In fact, one of the reasons for the hostility is buried underneath the Mediterranean Sea. So let's look at what is buried underneath these Mediterranean waters. Various research reports show that the eastern Mediterranean Sea area could provide the reserves of more than 60 trillion cubic feet of gas, according to the USA Geological Survey. The estimated figure comes to 122 trillion cubic feet of gas and 1.7 billion barrels of oil that lie in the basin. It's said that this amount of gas is equivalent to approximately 76 years of gas consumption in the European Union. Apart from this discovery, Israel, Egypt and Cyprus have discovered meaningful amounts of such resources from the following fields: Zohr, Tamar, and Leviathan and Aphrodite. It's also said that these discoveries have only discovered a partial amount of resources, and most of these resources are still waiting to be discovered in the whole region. We can see the following from these research reports. It is clear as to why Turkey and Greece are fighting over the eastern Mediterranean Sea, and why other countries in the world are highly interested in Turkey-Greece dispute, as well as in this area. Since this is the case, it leads us to the following questions. 1. How will such resources be shared by neighbouring countries? 2. What kind of international laws and agreements would need to be made? 3. How does it all work? According to the 1982 United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea and Maritime Boundary, every state has the right to establish the breadth of its territorial sea, up to a limit not exceeding 12 nautical miles, measured from baselines determined in accordance with this convention, giving the countries full sovereignty if there are no other countries nearby. But this is normally 6 nautical miles, or divided equally if there is another country within the calculations. Exclusive economic zones, EEZs, extend 200 nautical miles from the baseline. Within this area, the coastal nation has sole exploitation rights over all natural resources and economical means in casual use. The term may include the territorial sea and even the continental shelf. But what happens when such zones are overlapping? Usually two countries make a mutual agreement sharing the zones equally, where a median line is drawn in between territories. In order to claim such zones, firstly, countries would need to make announcements for maritime boundary, and secondly, sign agreements under EEZs with other countries. Most of Eastern Mediterranean countries have announced their maritime boundaries, however not yet signed a mutual agreement under EEZs with all their neighbours. So far, Greece and Cyprus signed an agreement with Egypt, and Turkey signed an agreement with Libya, which can also explain a little of Turkey's interest in Libyan conflict. Other players in the region, such as Israel, Palestine, Lebanon, Syria, have not signed an EEZs agreement with Turkey or Greece yet. But why are these countries still waiting? Israel has made agreements with Egypt, Cyprus and Greece for a new gas pipeline to deliver gas to EU, but this was prior to Turkey's maritime boundary announcement. Since Turkey has already announced its maritime and made the EEZ's agreement with Libya, Israel's idea seems to look rather unrealistic, as it seems Turkey will not allow such actions without permission. And Turkey also seems to be working on the fact that its neighbouring countries are losing out massively for making such deals without Turkey being involved. For instance, according to Turkey's calculations and geometric formula, if Egypt was to make a deal with Turkey, Egypt's EEZs will dramatically increase by 6,000 kilometers because Turkey has the longest shores in eastern Mediterranean region. Turkey is trying to make its neighbours aware of these calculations, which is one of the other reasons why Israel and other neighbouring countries are on hold with regards to this matter. Because of the recent US election and never-ending Brexit deals, most complex issues such as this one were on hold, not even mentioning COVID-19 effect on geopolitics. But since the election in the US has completed and the UK has now made a deal with the EU, we shall soon see some changes for such situations around the world. The key argument point for Greece and Turkey that will cause significant impact on both parties' interest is Majesty Island. Why is this island so important? Firstly, Greece argues that Greece is entitled to claim maritime boundary and expand its zone to 12,000 nautical miles for all of its islands, not only for the Aegean Sea but also the Majesty Island in the eastern Mediterranean, and this would leave Turkey with near enough to nothing. Secondly, Greece then applies the EEZs to Majesty Island, giving it a zone ratio of the amount that is 4,000 times greater than the size of the actual island. Turkey, on the other hand, argues that such small islands cannot make any claims if there's a mainland nearby, meaning the Republic of Turkey, which will have the priority and right to claim a maritime boundary, and EEZs regardless of any islands. To have a better understanding of this situation, we looked into similar cases that took place throughout the history around the world. The following research samples of practice show jurisprudence where islands have received reduced effect or been partially or wholly enclaved or even completely ignored. Case sample 1, 1997 to 78 of UK and France. The UK tried expanding its zone to take control of waters for the Channel of Islands, but the case resulted in France's favour. Isles of Scilly was particularly affected and Channel Islands enclaved. Case sample 2, 1982. Tunisia and Libya. Kerkennah Islands have reduced effect. Case sample 3, 1985. Libya and Malta reduced effect of Malta on Libya's zone. Case sample 4, 1992. Canada and France enclaved and reduced effect of St. Pierre Miquelon. Case sample 5, 1993. Denmark and Norway reduced effect on Jan Mayen Islands. Case sample 6, 1999. Yemen and Tria mixed areas show full effect, reduced effect and no effect. Case sample 7, 2001. Qatar and Bahrain, more complex zones showing no effect. Case sample 8, 2007. Nicaragua and Honduras, partial enclave. Case sample 9, 2009. Romania and Ukraine, one in Black Sea, showing no effect. Case sample 10, 2012. Nicaragua and Colombian Caribbean islands showing a mixture of partial and full effects, depending on the distance between each country. Case sample 11, 1969. Iran and Qatar agreement Persian Gulf, small islands showing no effect at all. Case sample 12, 1971. Tunisia and Italy agreement mixed islands showing enclave. Case sample 13, 1973. Canada and Denmark, Greenland, sovereignty disputed yet overlooked in the delimitation agreement. Case sample 14, 1988. USSR and Sweden agreement showing reduced the effect and the joint fishes zone under EEZ. Case sample 15, 1978. Papua New Guinea and Australia, Australian islands. What do you think? A little too close? As a few miles to Papua New Guinea? The solution was 1978 Torres Strait Treaty. As we've seen with the research samples, islands do not automatically generate full maritime boundary or EEZ's jurisdiction areas with international law, especially if the island or islands have any connection to the mainland or belong to a country, as that country will have its own zone. If a country has no neighbours nearby, then it could use its islands for expansion of its zones, as there will be not any overlapping issues, disputes or complaints. This is different for some islands though, especially when a number of multiple small islands make up a country. It can have such rights to claim even if it's overlapping with the nearby country's zone, but again it usually gets divided equally in half and shared by both parties. But we must remember to apply this rule only if a country is made out of small islands, like some Caribbean island countries. Another dispute between Greece and Turkey is about demilitarization of the islands that were given to Greece by Turkey under the Treaty of Lausanne 1923, which some believe would be finished after 100 years in 2023. Greece argues that this argument no longer exists, therefore it can militarize all of these islands because it sees Turkey as a threat. Turkey, on the other hand, argues that these islands were given to Greece with certain conditions, and if Greece carries on militarizing these islands on the basis that the Treaty of Lausanne no longer exists, then Turkey will do everything by all means to get these islands back. Turkey's intervention in the violation of this treaty is kind of a warning to Greece. Turkey says if Greece complies with terms and conditions of the treaty, then it has no disputes with Greece. The final dispute between Greece and Turkey is Cyprus. Cyprus was divided into two parts with a final war on the 20th of July 1974. The UK was agreed to be the only third-party country to get involved and was also given 2 military bases to keep the peace. During this war, Greece supported the southern part, which is today's Cyprus, and was recognised by most countries straight away. Turkey supported the northern part, which is today's Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus, and is still only recognised by Turkey. Cyprus joined the EU in 2004 and claims to have its own EEZs, without taking the northern part into account, not giving the northern part of the island any meaningful share of EEZ's rights, but Cyprus says that it's willing to negotiate if certain agreements have made. Also, it made deals with France to give the French a military base regardless of previous international agreements, in which the UK military was the only third party for keeping peace on the island. Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus argues that such agreements cannot be achieved when Cyprus wants some land from the northern part, and asks Turkey to defend Northern Cypriots' rights for this matter, and also made an agreement with Turkey allowing its ships to search for resources in some complex zones. Greek media seems to think it has full backing from the EU, especially from France after making a credit agreement of 2.5 billion euros to buy French Rafale fighter jets when Greece is already in a huge amount of debt. However, Greek media also seem to think that the necessary support from Germany for this dispute is lacking. Turkish media seems to think that it has an ongoing good partnership with the UK, especially when considering Turkey was the first ever country the UK chose to make a deal with straight after Brexit. The UK also seemed to be rather not happy with the fact that the French was offered to have a military base in Cyprus. Also, the UK made agreement with Turkey to help them build their first fighter jet, TFX's engine. There are also various ongoing projects and agreements between Turkey and the UK. Therefore, it seems both countries' media do mutually agree that there will be strong future partnerships in building the new world order with some of the partnering countries around the world, including those in the EU. EU's position. But what is the EU doing about all of this? Well, the EU wants to support Greece in this matter at any cost because of natural resources. However, the situation gets a little tense and rather challenging when it comes to sanctioning Turkey. Germany, Poland, Spain, Italy, Hungary and Malta are leading countries who think it would be an unfair treatment to apply some strict sanctions on Turkey, especially considering the fact that it would backfire on these countries and they have a number of trade agreements with Turkey, which could jeopardize the whole EU's economy. Russia's position. Russia is mostly interested in being able to stay in the warm waters of the Mediterranean Sea, to defend itself against NATO and to expand its geopolitical and strategic ability. Russia is hoping that it can find new allies in Libya and Syria to increase its lifespan in this region, also willing to participate to resolve its issues and disputes between all parties. But the downside for Russia is that it could lose its European markets custom dramatically on selling gas when the eastern Mediterranean fields become fully operational and the pipelines are installed. This can also explain Russia's interest in the Libyan conflict too, but there's still not much Russia can do about it rather than reducing its gas prices, as it was suggested to Russian President Putin by Russian experts when Turkish President Erdogan announced the discovery of new Turkish natural gas fields in the Black Sea. The United States of America, USA, however, will soon show its true colours and strategies on the eastern Mediterranean once everything is settled in the White House. The USA also keeps reminding the EU countries who want the US to apply sanctions on Turkey that Turkey is NATO's second biggest and strongest ally, but still recently applied sanctions on Turkey for buying S-400 missile system from Russia, which caused an impact on Turkey's economy. We shall cover this topic in future videos. China's position. China, on the other side, wants to find a resolution while respecting the sovereignty of the states involved. The Eastern Mediterranean Sea disputes are not good for China because of the critical alliances and Chinese port projects of the region. For example, Port Piraeus holds an important share of China's trade with the European Union. China also makes considerable investments in roads, highways and rails that link the port to Central and Western Europe. Furthermore, China also continues bilateral negotiations with Turkey on the port at Izmir, and Istanbul holds strategic importance for the Chinese Belt and Road Initiative (BRI). Its alliance with Egypt constitutes a very critical point for China's trade because of the significance of the Suez Canal for intercontinental maritime trade from Asia to Europe. In addition, China also has the right to manage the port of Ashdod in Israel for 49 years. So let's put it this way, that it's China's interest to resolve this dispute, but how can it be done without offending any party? If China was to be forced to pick a side, the decisions of the creators of the newly updated world would have influence on China's decision on the matter, as China is in desperate need for negotiation for a leading place in the new world. Despite its desperation, China is currently employing its historical wait-and-see strategy. Thank you for watching this video. Please like, subscribe and support our channel so we can make more videos like this. Stay safe, stay tuned.